It's the Blue Vote Cafe, a little bit wonkish, a whole lot of fun. I'm David Schellenberg, along with Rachel Oyster. We're the co-chairs for Democrats Abroad in Canada's capital region of Ottawa. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, David. It's usually my name you trip over. This time it was yours.
Yeah, that's fair. What have you been
tired.
up
to? Oh, well, we just went for a really nice walk and we saw a flock of toddlers, which is always just kind of uplifting.
A flock of toddlers?
Well, there were maybe 10 of them in one of those little lines where they're all holding onto a rope.
Okay.
With one woman walking backward in front of them, and we're all waving hi and bye.
Excellent. I was trying to think if you were talking about humans or some other critter. I was thinking a flock of toddlers. That just means one of those, murder of crows kind of phrases that I just had never heard before.
Well, there you go.
Well, there you go. Who's with us today, Rachel?
Today I'm so excited. We have Ezra Levin, who's the co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible, along with Leah Greenberg being the co-founder and co-executive director, not here with us today, and Debbie Weiss, who was Indivisible's first moderator, is one of its most active volunteers, and a co-founder of the Mod Squad, which she will tell us about. So welcome,
Hello.
Ezra and Debbie. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here, Rachel and David.
Our first question usually is, where are you at the moment? Where are you living? And we also would like to know if you've ever lived abroad.
Ezra, let's start with you.
Ooh, so unfortunately, I'm in the D.C. area. Don't hold that against me. I try to spend as much time away from D.C. as I can, visiting with Indivisible groups from across the country. Lived for an extended period of time in the independent Republic of Texas. That's where I grew up. My family's all there. I grew up in the boonies there. But living abroad, most I've done is spend a few weeks in Santander, Spain, in high school and college, traveled some. But I would love to travel more, and now it's getting a little bit more difficult now. So sometime in the future, I hope to make it out overseas, but unfortunately not in the near term.
It's not the traveling out; it's the coming back that's becoming harder.
Indeed, that is the problem. We've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I think they would get somewhat frustrated if I didn't make it back. Although Leah might be happy.
And I also want to say, don't apologize for DC. That's my birthplace. And I want to say, on behalf of many other DA members, DC statehood.
Absolutely.
So, Debbie, let's hear from you. Where are you living, and have you lived abroad?
I live in Los Angeles, and yes, I have. I lived in London, and I had a flat in West London for about 20 years. I came back with the best souvenir you could get. I have a British husband. And and I also lived in Tokyo. So I am really interested in seeing how the Mod Squad can help support Democrats abroad in any way. This is right up my wheelhouse, and I am super excited.
Oh, can't wait to talk to you about that. And I will say, since you came back with the best possible souvenir, that our very scientific determination, David's and mine, since we began doing this pod, is that it is love that makes the world go around. Most people we talk to are living somewhere else because of love. Sometimes it's work, sometimes school, but those are distant second and third.
Yep. Yeah, it's quite remarkable when you ask people, they moved abroad to go to school or something or some sort of adventure, and they're still there 20 years later, and we'll ask them, well, why are you still there? And it's often love.
Met my spouse. Yep.
Yep.
And that's the same for me. Look, I moved to D.C. for work, but Leah's folks are in the area that we live right nearby them. We've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and it's, just categorically better experience in life if your in-laws are nearby helping out with the kids. So that's why we're here.
Well,
for sure. Yeah, there you go. So let's talk about, Indivisible and the Mod Squad. So I don't know how many of our listeners are really actually familiar with Indivisible. So can you tell us what it is and how it got started?
Yeah, so I don't hold this against me either. I used to be a congressional staffer. I worked in Congress, and I started...
I worked on Parliament Hill in Ottawa, so...
we love congressional staffers. You guys know so much stuff.
So I was there during at very end of the George W. Bush administration, and there when we got these big... majorities in Congress under Obama, and it gave me real unrealistic expectation for what Congress can get done. Suddenly we had 60 votes in the Senate, and we had the House and Obama come in. We did the stimulus, we did Affordable Care Act, we did Dodd-Frank, we did national service legislation.
Oh, wow.
And one thing that we saw happen while we were trying to get all this stuff done was this bigoted, racist, sometimes violent grassroots movement popped up known as the Tea Party. And it was organizing locally, showing up at congressional district offices, showing up at town halls, and making a lot of ruckus trying to scare the Dems off of getting things done. And my spouse, Leah, was working for a member of Congress from Virginia at the same time, saw the same experience. Now, they didn't stop everything, but they did slow things down and in some cases did defeat legislation.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 2016, I'm working as an anti-poverty advocate. Leah's working on anti-human trafficking. And we see Donald Trump get elected. And we were in our own worlds, obviously fighting against what was to become the Trump agenda, but we knew that wasn't going to be enough. We knew we had to have a coalition to say no. And shockingly, what we saw from the Democratic leadership at the time was this overwhelming interest in working with the guy. That we lost this election, but, well, we got to reach across the aisle. Let's work on infrastructure together. Put aside the idea that they're talking about internment camps during World War II as a model for what to do with Muslims and immigrants and refugees.
Right.
Democrats need to show that we're reasonable and we're going to work with Trump and MAGA. And we were shocked. Right. We were shocked. So we thought, you know what we could do? We could write a guide to how to actually influence your member of Congress. We've seen what works, putting aside the racism and violence. The Tea Party was quite effective. So let's dissect what made the Tea Party work well. Let's put it out into the world, and maybe some people will make use of it. So Leah and I wrote this guide that we called Indivisible. It broke down what worked on the Tea Party and recommended people start little indivisible groups, focus on their member of Congress, never give an inch, help Democrats find their spine, fracture the MAGA coalition, and then go celebrate. So we put it out into the world, and shockingly, look, we immediately went viral, and we just got bombarded with communication from all over the country, rural areas, suburban areas, urban areas, red states, blue states, purple states, and they all said the exact same thing. This guide is just full of typos. And then they also said, and also we're Indivisible Albany, we're Indivisible Austin, we're Indivisible Tallahassee. What do we do next? And we said, oh my gosh, I guess we got to help support this movement. And it blossomed into this movement of thousands of locally led indivisible groups, led by normal everyday people who raised their hands and said, I guess I've got to do something. And they're organizing their indivisible group. So that's how we got started, and we've been working to support these indivisible groups ever since.
Wow.
Typos just means it's from the grassroots.
That's right. That lends authenticity to it.
Exactly. It's real.
I posted something to Blue Sky 2 days ago with a lot of typos in it. Just to, keep true to my roots.
I got to ask you about the Tea Party now that you've mentioned it. Like, compare and contrast the Tea Party with present day today. Were they worse, or is this worse than what we saw then?
Oh, it's far worse today. Yeah. It's far worse today. It's almost quaint by comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. And in fact, I would say Trump 2.0 is far scarier and far darker than Trump 1.0.
Yeah.
And in part because the Republican Party during Trump 1.0 was actually part of resistance from time to time, that they actually weren't unified behind MAGA or unified behind Trump, and you found elements of resistance within the party. And the broader, we'll get into this, but the broader democracy, the elements of society that uphold liberal democracy, whether it's law firms or universities or media institutions or businesses or nonprofits, in Trump 1.0 they were actually putting up some fight. And in Trump 2.0 we see these pillars of democracy falling down and obeying in advance and needing support from the grassroots. Mm-hmm. So the Tea Party, gosh, if we could just fight with the Tea Party now, love that. Yeah. If we didn't have MAGA fascist forces in ski masks going and disappearing Americans over to an El Salvadoran gulag, I would love that fight. That's not where we are now.
Right, exactly.
On that note,
Rachel's turn.
Well, there's so many different places to go, and I don't want to lose Debbie either. So.
No, it's time to talk about Debbie. Is she still here?
She's still here. Do you want to fill in a little bit?
I don't know how I'm going to follow that.
Well, just think about it as two parallel paths. We'll just let you leapfrog each other. Yeah. Tell us a little about the Mod Squad.
Sure. So as we talked about, I was Indivisible National's first moderator. I didn't even know that was a thing, but we saw for the midterms I was helping, I guess it was 2018. I can't do math right now. Yeah, I think it was 2018. And there was a ton of volunteers. People wanted to help. They wanted direction. They wanted hope. And it was so much that the staff were getting flooded. And I was like, I'll help. And I didn't even know what a moderator was. So I basically started, I'm an onboarding moderator. I welcome you. Hey, can I help you out? Let me show you the lay of the land, that kind of thing. Because one, I want someone who's giving up their time to have a good experience and feel good. And two, I'd like to hopefully make them a volunteer for life. They're like, oh, that was really good. I'm going to tell my friends. I'm going to go do it elsewhere. So I think my superpower is multiplying myself. Yes, could I send texts now or do this, that? But I think I'm more suited to try and help other people, elevate and be the best they can. Mm-hmm. And so the best moderator that I ever recruited is Jenny Wallacho. And she and I saw what happens a lot is people are, very excited, ramped up right before the election. And then the election happens and everybody kind of goes back. But a lot of people, including myself at the time, didn't really know about there's the odd special election and these other things. So Jenny and I created the Mod Squad to keep together high-powered volunteers and moderators who kind of want to stay together. And a lot of times we're quiet and then we activate. I like to think we're like this elite squad. So for example, the special elections that were happening in Florida with Gay Valmont, I reached out to Gay Valmont's team and said, here's what we can do. Do you want our help? And they said yes. And there's no way to know, but a good guesstimate, I think, is that we helped get them a couple thousand votes because we enabled them to not just call during the Zooms, which the staff handled beautifully, but it's only a staff of so many and they can only do so much. So we brought in moderators, we brought in infrastructure, we created a Slack for them, we supported the callers during the non-Zooming times, and people made a ton of calls and activated a ton of votes. Amazing. And we basically go where we're needed. And right now we're helping any Indivisible group that wants it for free, set up whatever structure they want. We're excited, so excited, I can't tell you, to be working with the international Indivisible groups. Like that for me is like a dream come true to do that. And we're trying to help set up the infrastructure for the midterms now. So everybody's ready, not scrambling, soon before, so that the structure's there and they have the game plan. And that's pretty much what we do.
That's amazing.
I have to admit, and I feel bad for saying this, but I don't know what the Mod Squad is.
Mod Squad is basically a cute little phrase that we made so mod is short for moderators. Okay. So moderators are usually volunteers who are kind of like very experienced volunteers helping other volunteers. So the staff can do staffy things. Right. We're just like, hey, we'll help answer your questions. And then if we have to escalate it, we do, but we can handle a lot of the easier stuff so that staff focuses, on all the campaigning things that they do.
But and it's also a historical reference.
And Mod Squad just sounded really cute.
Because it's a historical reference. It's a historical reference too, right? It was a TV show in the 60s.
That's what I remember as being a TV show.
Yeah.
It's adorable.
We just thought it sounded cute. And so that's cute. What we are. We're a squad of moderators and high-level volunteers.
Excellent.
Wonderful. So you mentioned the international Indivisible groups popping up. And Ezra, I was really curious to learn what you thought about that. You have hundreds or thousands of groups popping up across the U.S., and then suddenly you have some of us doing it outside the U.S. So what did you think when you started seeing that happening?
Well, I mean, I'm in awe. I'm proud. I feel privileged to be part of this movement that is rising up against authoritarianism and is giving people a platform to organize themselves. I mean, Indivisible is founded on this basic idea that politics is too important to be left up to the politicians. If the politicians were doing their job, we wouldn't be here. And maybe it's naive, but maybe it's just overly optimistic. But I think if democracy is going to survive, we need normal, everyday people participating in this. If we don't do that, it's everybody else who wins. It's the donors, it's the interest groups, it's the industry. The politicians, it's easy to vilify. It's easy to say, you're the problem, you're corrupt, you're wrong, and if we just get rid of you, we're fine. In some cases, you do need to get rid of them electorally. But politicians, institutions, they're weather vanes. They're weather vanes. They move in the direction that they're pushed, and they're pushed by 1,000 different actors. And so the idea is we organize wherever we are. We identify the leverage we have wherever we are, and we have a real bias towards action. We're not here to just consume politics. Anybody can consume politics. That's fine. We want to get people out of just consumption towards action. So identifying what you can actually do. And Debbie is just just the ideal, the prototypical Indivisible member and leader. Getting involved, yes, because she's concerned. Getting involved, yes, because we share the same goals in the work that we're doing. But fundamentally focus on, okay, but real talk, what are we doing? Because what I've found over the last 8 years is, in organizing, our enemy isn't Donald Trump, it's not MAGA, it's not Mitch McConnell, it's not the Democratic Party, it's not Chuck Schumer. At times, some or all of those are the opposition, and we're organizing against them in some way. The enemy, though, it's nihilism, it's cynicism, it's fatalism, it's this sense that we are mere victims of world events, and what we do doesn't matter, so we should just give up. And I think that's how we lose. That's the existential threat. If the authoritarians have all the power and we believe it, then they've already won. And so we've got to identify ways to get people involved wherever they are and to identify what leverage they have. So if you're organizing in Ottawa, awesome. Identify what leverage you have. How is that going to contribute? You're not just coming together for the community. You're not just coming together to see your name in the paper. That's fun. That's nice. That's good. But ideally, you're coming together to do something, to change the world in some way. And I think people are smart. I think if they organize themselves, they can figure out where they can have that impact. We try to give them a framework for doing that and then let them lead, and interesting stuff follows. So more power to you, Canada. More power to you for actually organizing, and let's figure out ways to work together.
And one of the things that we are certainly seeing is, there's those of us who can vote in U.S. elections and influence that way, but these global protests now are hitting at the pocketbook, at the bank accounts. Like where people around the world are refusing to go to the United States to visit, refusing to buy American products. And Canada is certainly legendary in that. Here in Ontario, you cannot buy booze from the United States anymore in the entire province of Ontario. It doesn't exist because of the way we are protesting back. So in terms of what you're thinking about with protests, it's one thing to wander around carrying signs and making noise, but we're seeing something different this time around.
We are. So, and I think we're seeing something different in part because of what we were talking about earlier, just how different the threat is this time around. Mm-hmm. When you see the pillars of liberal democracy start to fall, these law firms, these universities, these media institutions, how do you reassert democracy? What is it that we can do? And if you talk to the experts in authoritarianism, Maria Stephan or Timothy Snyder or Heather Cox Richardson, or pick your favorite scholar, what they will tell you is when the pillars of democracy fall, it falls on the people to be the bulwark for democracy. And what we're doing when we show up and we apply pressure, we're not just making ourselves feel good. We're not just aligning on the right side of history. We are doing that. But what we're doing is we're shifting people's time horizon. So when a leader decides to cave to Trump, when a law firm decides to cut a deal with the administration, when a media institution decides to go easy on the authoritarian overreach, what they are doing is engaging in totally rational short-term thinking. Because there is risk right now. The administration is threatening these institutions and these leaders. They might suffer some immediate harm to their bottom line or their reputation or their ability to do their work if they stand up. And so they act as if this is now our new reality. But when people show up in mass on Hands Off Day on April 5th, we had 3.5 million people in every single state in the country and all across the world showing up peacefully. What that does is send a very strong message to those leaders and those institutions that the moment we're in right now is temporary. Donald Trump is an unpopular, lame duck president, and he's on his way out. There's going to be a Democratic House majority in 2027. There's going to be a Democratic president in 2029. This era of authoritarianism is going to be replaced by an era of accountability. And you, Paul Weiss Law Firm, you're still going to be a law firm. You, Columbia University, you're still going to be a university. Right. You, ABC News, you're still going to be a media institution.
60 Minutes will still be there.
Yeah. Exactly. The damage that you're doing to your reputation now, you're going to have to live with. Now, that message is then received by other actors. When we were talking to the Harvard organizers as the administration was going at them and trying to get them to cave to pressure and allow Trump to take over the university, what we heard directly from them was the hands-off protests directly supported their efforts to stand strong against them.
Wow.
So we are sending this is not just symbolic. This is practical, hard-headed, strategic organizing to shore up the pillars of democracy so that we can make it to the next election and start to fracture the authoritarian coalition and build our pro-democracy coalition.
Yeah. Easy.
Yeah.
Debbie, I see you speak.
I know.
Raising my hand on radio.
Please,
How did you
speak
see
up.
me?
It's magic.
What I was looking for when Trump 1 came into office, and that's when I tripped over Indivisible, I was looking for hope and action items. And that's exactly what Indivisible gave to me. And that is what I, in turn, try and share with others, right? You want to feel like there's something you can fight for, something you can do. And the biggest thing that I do, which was advice from Ezra, was he said, because I was feeling guilty, because I was a great texter and moderator. I'm like, I'm not phone banking. I'm not doing this. He was like, hold on. You're great at this. Stay doing what you're great at. So what I am suggesting to all your listeners is to find out if you're good at postcarding, be the best postcarder you can be. If you're good at the door knocking, be the best door knocker you can be. Bring some friends, try and recruit other people, but just shine in your area. And that, I think, is the best thing. And try and do something a couple times a week. I'm calling the senators a couple times a week with the emails I get from Indivisible. Call about this, call about that. Just do something, be something. Rather than talking, complaining, being on the social media, do action. Show up to this No Kings thing. That is going to be the biggest thing. And grab some friends. We have to show the strongest support we can. And it's something that's easy to do, right?
Yeah.
Find out where it is on indivisible.org, sign up for one in your zip code, and you go over. And not only that, it's going to make you feel good because you're going to see a lot of other people. You're not alone. You're like,
The
wait
weather's
a
going to be
second.
great.
There's other people. There's other people who care also. And that is the power of all this. And that's what I'm trying to really multiply as much as possible. And so thank you, Ezra, for giving me that suggestion, because that is what we're doing. And we're doing really well. And the other thing I try and do is connect with groups who need our help, the Mod Squad's help. And so I have 1 to 2 Zooms a week where we're setting up a Slack, or I'm doing an interview, or I'm activating someone, or reaching out to a campaign and helping campaigns. We really like helping these special elections, and we're really good at it.
Do you teach how to make funny signs as a part of that?
Me? No,
One of my
I'm
favorite
bad
part
at
of a
that.
protest is there's people who take the protest very seriously, and I understand that, but there's always a couple of signs in the crowd that are just so hilarious, and I wish I was that creative to come up with that. Could you please do a workshop on making funny signs?
So there's a whole line of thinking around organizing called laughtivism. And I know we're making a joke here. I think it's very serious and very
It is.
Because if you look, fighting authoritarianism is tough, and it can wear you down. And in fact, that's how they benefit. If we can't have fun while we're doing it, if it's a drag to be part of our protests, if we're treated like
if you want me to be sad for hours and hours and hours, I don't want to do this.
Exactly. So, signs like "so bad even introverts are here."
Yes.
When you look at over like the hands-off rallies, you saw all this organic, these real grassroots signs that have been created by folks, really funny.
Yep.
Ridiculous and ridiculing shows of opposition. I think that stuff's really important, actually. The opposition movement OPOR that took down Slobodan Milosevic was built on this idea of laughtivism and engaging in humor and ridicule, because Donald Trump, he wants you to fear him. He wants to be seen as a powerful bully. What he doesn't want to be is a joke. He doesn't want to be a joke. No authoritarian wants to be a joke. Mm-hmm. They want to be feared. So I would, David, I lean into that. I think that's powerful and good.
So for the Ottawa, we haven't even talked about the No King's Day yet, but for our rally here, there's a lot of talk about making taco costumes because taco is getting under Trump's skin, as Trump always chickens out. And also chicken costumes come to it could be a pretty colorful thing.
Well, and the brand of that is Trump does insults really, really well, but he really cannot take an insult.
Can't take them. That's right.
That's right.
So let's talk about No King's Day.
Talk about it.
Yeah, tell us.
Well,
how did it come about? What is it?
For folks who have not seen the news, Donald Trump is planning to spend $50 million, these are taxpayer dollars, on a military birthday parade for himself on his 79th birthday.
I'm going to be watching this. It's going to be entertaining.
Well,
for all the wrong reasons, but it'll be entertaining.
It is bonkers. It's the kind of thing you would see in North Korea and wouldn't expect to see in the United States of America. But he's decided to do it. He wanted to do it in the first term, but got shamed away from doing it. He is going forward this term. There's nobody to hold him back now. So he's going to roll tanks through the streets of Washington, D.C. to celebrate his birthday. And
it's going to be incredible.
We saw that he was doing that, and the goal of that is to demonstrate strength. To demonstrate that he is all-powerful, that he is commander of the world, and look at him riding some tank through the streets of D.C. or whatever he's going to be doing that day. And we saw that, and we saw a narrative opportunity to create a contrast, to make him look weak and small, and to demonstrate what patriotism can actually look like, what pluralistic democracy can actually look like. So rather than giving him any opportunity to crack down on peaceful protests in D.C. or to have counter-protests who would be accused of protesting the military in D.C., we're organizing literally everywhere else. Everywhere else. So far, as of us talking on June 2nd, there are 1,400 events all across the world that have been registered so far. 1,400 more are coming in every day. I see there is one in Ottawa. I see there are a couple more in Canada. Yep. If you go to nokings.org, you look it up, and you don't find one near you, congratulations. You get to put together a No King's Day protest. That's how all of these have gotten together. It's people raising their hand and saying, okay, we're doing this, and we're doing it everywhere other than downtown D.C. And we want to protest peacefully, boisterously, in an empowering way that sends the signal, we're not alone. There are more of us than there are of them, and that when we organize against a monarch, to prevent a monarchy, and to reassert democratic control of this country. So I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a great event all over the country. I would encourage folks listening, if there is one near you, register for it, pull some friends in, go, advertise it, put it out into your network. This is grassroots. There's not some big ad budget out there that's going to make sure everybody hears about it. If you're listening to me now, I'm asking you, go advertise it. And then if there's not one near you, go register it. This is going to be big, and I think it's a good turning point in this fight against authoritarianism. It's going to help us bring a lot more people in, and we can build on it further.
So do you buy the idea that some scholars have presented that in order to overthrow a movement like this, it takes 2% of the population to stand up?
The percent that I've heard from Erica Chenoweth, is one of these scholars at Harvard, has said 3.5% sustained pressure from the population. And in the United States, that would be somewhere between 11 and 12 million people. She and others have since come back, and there are caveats. So this isn't an exact science. I think what we do know is that if you have sustained engagement from a broad swath of the country, not just folks in blue states, not just folks in city centers, but people everywhere demonstrating, it is very difficult for that authoritarian to hang on. But we're not just sending a message to Trump. Trump is not all powerful. There are literally thousands of elected officials all throughout the country. There are thousands more institutions that are deciding whether to go along or whether to resist right now. We're sending a message to all of them. So there are members of Congress right now trying to decide whether or not to cut Medicaid for millions of people, trying to not decide whether or not to cut food assistance, trying to decide whether or not to cut taxes for billionaires. We need a display of people power and strength, because these elected officials know something that is very real. Most of the time, most people are not paying attention. Most of the time, you can get away with screwing over your constituents because they're never going to know. Members of Congress, Congress as a whole has an approval rating. This is a real poll. Has an approval rating on par with toenail fungus and cockroaches. literally. But most members of Congress, if you look at Congress on the House side and the Senate side, their re-election rates are 90, 95, 98%. Why? Why do people hate Congress but vote for their own elected official? It's because elected officials aren't dummies. I shouldn't say that. Some elected officials aren't dummies. But rather they're dummies.
We know
or not,
some, yeah.
They know how to do their job, and their job is to get reelected. And they get reelected by going back home and saying, yeah, Congress sucks. What a mess that place is. But I'm one of the good guys.
Killed all the cockroaches.
Yeah.
Well, do you worry there's a little bit of razzle-dazzle going on here? I mean, while we're seeing Elon Musk strutting around the Oval Office and his whole Doge thing, which ultimately, in the day, is not major cuts that he actually did, is there something going on that we're not paying attention to?
Well, actually, I mean, the real problem of the second Trump term is there's so much going on that it's difficult to pay attention to everything.
Exactly.
There is damage being done every day that is difficult to track because they are moving so swiftly. I will say with Elon Musk, we identified him as a weak figure in the MAGA chain early on. And so in February, we held across the country Musk or Us town halls where we showed up at Republican town halls and other town halls and said, why are you backing up Musk as he comes after our Social Security, as he comes after our Medicaid, as he comes after our Meals on Wheels? And Republican members of Congress, seeing how unpopular he was and fearing the blowback from their own constituents, started pushing back as well. Musk I don't know if it's a complete surrender or a strategic retreat, but he has announced he is leaving Washington.
Yeah.
He is out of the game. You don't do that if you've got the support of the party. He's doing that because he's been shamed out of Washington.
Because people aren't buying his products anymore.
But people aren't buying his products, and people are paying attention. If he was doing this fully behind the scenes, he'd get away with it. So we've really got to shine some sunlight on this and recognize, as you said, Rachel, 3.5%. We had 3.5 million people out on April 5th. That's great. It's the largest protest since the first Trump term. It's also not enough. It's not enough. We've got to be bigger. We've got to grow. I'm hoping that No King's Day will be bigger on June 14th, that we'll continue to build. And if we continue to build, it'll scare more and more electeds, more and more institutions to get in line and recognize that, okay, democracy is coming back. So I've got to factor that into my own political calculus right now.
Debbie, what do you think?
Yeah.
So many things.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that Musk leaving, I think the Tesla takedown protests were very effective. I think those were terrific. I think that Peter Thiel is stepping in to the gap that Musk made. And I think they're trying to turn it into Russia. I think they're trying to make a bunch of oligarchs. And, the Citizens United was very bad for that. But I don't worry about that. I try not to read the news. I try and focus on the change I can do. And so I don't spend a lot of time analyzing that. I go, what can I do this week to make things better? And that's what I try and do.
That's so healthy. That is so healthy. Because we can engage in like this kind of political talk until the cows come home, but nothing's going to change unless we actually get in and do something. And I think identifying the concrete thing you can do, you said it earlier, Debbie, but just to double down, I mean, it's cheaper than therapy. You're going to feel better for it, and you're actually going to make change. And so identifying the concrete ways, like what Mod Squad is doing, identifying the concrete ways you can actually move the ball forward. Maybe it's a special election. Maybe it's helping with a texting operation. Maybe it's helping organize volunteers, whatever it is. Something that actually changes something in the world versus just feeling bad about how bad everything is. I think I really encourage as many people as possible to find their community and do that.
Well, and we've talked about this on the podcast too, where a lot of times you think just showing up and being a face in the crowd doesn't count anything, but it's one more face in the crowd. Like, if everybody shows up and you don't have to bring a sign, you don't have to chant, you don't have to be in the middle of everything, you just have to be a face in the crowd, wear good shoes, bring water, yes, plan for it. But Debbie, do you find sometimes you just have to tell people to don't overthink it? Like, you just go.
Oh, I just told him to listen to me.
That's good advice.
Yeah, no. I don't necessarily tell people to overthink it. I find people sometimes come to me and say, hey, what should I do? I try and do the thinking and the stress for them.
Okay.
And then we have a channel in our Slack that is things to do. So we do the thinking. We just go here, do this, do that. And that's what I like. I like getting the weekly Indivisible emails. I don't want to do thinking. I don't want to analyze loads of social media posts. They just go, oh, call your senators, say this. I go, oh, that's easy. And then it takes 5 minutes and I call the 2 senators.
Yep.
I don't want to do too much thinking over there. I want to do my thinking over here and what I'm good at.
Right. Here's your script. Here's the phone number to call. It's all you got to do. And most of the times it's just a machine on the other end that you end up talking to anyways. So leave the message a bit more on the chain.
That's actually a good point that I want to bring up. I remember before I called the Senate the first time, I was scared. I thought they were going to analyze me and interview. I was going to have to defend my position, and I didn't know. I didn't read all the stuff. I think it's usually an intern or an assistant, and they go, oh, what's your name? What's your zip code? Oh, vote yes on this, vote no on that. What's the bill number? And then they hang up. It's painless.
Yes.
I was scared over nothing. And it's so, people don't know, they think they're just going to get interviewed or whatever. They simply just write down the information and you go on with your day.
Yep.
It's so easy.
And to have that one more tick on the spreadsheet at the end of the day, that they honestly do look at those tallies, those numbers, the way they add up. The more people that phone and just answer those yes/no questions makes a huge difference.
And
we're going to call this weathervaning. Going off what Ezra said, right? Enough of these calls is going to tilt the weather vane. Let's call this weathervaning.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea.
Yep.
I was going to say we, Democrats Abroad, for listeners who aren't aware of this, Democrats Abroad has a resistance page where we're posting, not we Democrats Abroad, the other leaders who are doing this are posting tiny actions you can take. The specific people, the list of links to the way you can call your legislators and what to say, the scripts, the issues that we're addressing specifically, usually things that will affect citizens living outside the country, but not always. And what was I going to say? Oh, yes. What we learned when we had the 2 leaders who are leading this, Julia Bryan and Inga Kemptrup, is that Republicans are 8 times more likely to call their representatives than Democrats. And that's a huge difference. So all the more reason to fall in line behind Debbie and start making these phone calls.
Debbie's face, if only this was TV, Debbie's face was shocked.
I have work to do.
I didn't know you hadn't heard that.
Yeah. Well, and the third just seems to be Republicans are more likely to fall in line. Democrats will always have an excuse. That senator did something stupid 5 years ago, and now I can't phone and do something because of this. Instead of just call and weathervane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's weathervane. I love it.
So, Ezra, back to you. The king just came to Ottawa, the actual king of Canada and of multiple other countries. And so I know here we're actually telling people don't bring a sign that says no kings because it just gets complicated. Is there a thing there about just even within the United States, one city to another city, one country to another city, where you come up with a very clear, simple message, but yet it resonates. It plays differently in different places.
In different places. Good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was part of the logic of the hands-off rallies on April 5th, was to create an umbrella that could mean different things to different people, but overall sent the right same message, which is we don't want this authoritarian overreaching and coming after insert, coming after our schools, coming after our communities, coming after our trans kids, coming after our immigrant neighbors, coming after our Medicaid, coming after our Social Security, whatever it was, fill in the blank. People come to the cause for different reasons.
Right.
That's great. We are not building a unified movement that says we are all going to do this on January of 2029 when there's a Democratic trifecta. We actually don't have to agree on that.
Right.
All we have to agree on is no to the authoritarians. It is intentionally broad-based, ideologically diverse, geographically dispersed, because we want to welcome people in who do not agree with us on everything. If you're in a room organizing and everybody in that room agrees with you on everything, your room is too small. I heard that from Maurice Mitchell. I should give credit, from Working Families Party. Brilliant insight. We need into this moment to be organizing in big rooms with people that we honestly disagree with on a whole bunch of stuff. That's fine. We don't need to be best friends or ideological partners on everything that we want to get done for the rest of our lives. Successful movements against authoritarianism are based on broad-based coalitions that can say no. That's where we start. We can fight it out. Let's fight it out in 2029. I look forward to disagreeing with everybody on education policy or tax policy or healthcare policy.
Presidential candidate.
Let's do it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's. I would love to. I'm a policy nerd. I would love to get into the details of the earned income tax credit and marginal tax rates. Great, let's do it. But right now, it's: do you want fascism or do you want democracy? Exactly. And so, it is really important that we lead this in a way that is welcoming to people from different viewpoints. And it's important that it is not top down, that this is locally led and people figure out the best way to plug in.
Yep.
That makes sense for them in their local context. I think the reason why Indivisible still exists is not because I'm proud of the guides we put out. I'm proud of the tools we put out. But the reason why we exist is because this is locally led. You can Google image search Indivisible logo. You'll find Indivisible's national logo, and you can buy a shirt or a hat with it. Great, fine. I hope you do. But more importantly, scroll through the Google image search, and you'll see literally hundreds of local Indivisible logos of varying sizes, shapes, colors, artistic capability, but they're all lovingly created at the local level. And that's important. It's real. It's owned by the locals. And at the end of the day, we're calling No King's Day on June 14th. I think it's going to be the largest protest in years. I think millions of people will come out. And I guarantee you there are going to be some Indivisible groups that say, hey, that's great, but actually we're doing this other thing on June 14th. And up to them. Right. We'll have a national day of action around congressional recess when members of Congress are back home. We'll say, hey, we all got to show up and push on this reconciliation bill. And we'll get hundreds of events, and hundreds more Indivisible groups are focusing on a mutual aid program that they're working on, or a city council race that's important to them, or a state level advocacy fight. Cool. Good. Great. You should lead that. This is not going to be a top-down success. This is only going to work if people feel real ownership, if actual people are leading it on the ground. So, David, to your point, if No Kings doesn't make sense in Ottawa, but you don't want authoritarians, figure out how it makes sense on the ground there, and still please show up.
Right.
Absolutely. So for the record, I was just going to say Canada, the UK, Spain, some of the others are having No Tyrants Day on June 14th.
Oh, yes. I've seen No Tyrants. I've seen that title, and I didn't put two and two together until just now that's why. Fascinating. Yep. Okay.
Yep. Although I'll repeat something I said to you guys before we started recording, that the best sign I've seen this week was, for the U.S., we only have one king, and that is Elvis. So I'm hoping somebody will make that sign, or
I'm sure
many people make that sign.
You do it, Rachel. Make that sign.
Okay, I'll make that sign.
I think a lot of us have gotten to the point now where we know Republicans, we might even love some Republicans who might have voted for Trump and then are not getting at all what they thought they were going to get out of Trump. So how do we cross the aisle and invite Republicans who can't be happy at all with what's going on to be a part of all this?
I mean, I think you're identifying a reality that fascism did not win in November. The status quo lost. That was the result of the election. If you look out across the world, in every Western democracy that held an election in 2024, it didn't matter how long the ruling party had been in office. It didn't matter what their ideology was. Didn't matter geography. We're talking Slovenia to Slovakia to South Korea to France. The ruling party lost votes in 2024, United States included. The reason is because in this post-COVID inflation world, a lot of people did not feel like the status quo was delivering for them. So you have a lot of voters who voted for Trump saying, well, I don't want more of the same, and I'm not wild about Trump, but at least it's not the same. Maybe you'll blow it up and I'll benefit. They were voting for lower prices of eggs and bread, and instead they're getting fascism. And this was predictable. We predicted it a week after the election when we wrote the Indivisible guide.
We did, but I get how people might have had that in their head at the time, who are not necessarily politically savvy and are not getting at all what they wanted, but they're not the guts. Maybe they just don't have the guts to turn around and admit that they voted the wrong way.
Well, I don't, I just think we need to welcome them in. If you are a Trump voter who voted for lower prices of eggs and now you're pissed off because your Medicaid is being threatened and you're looking for what to do, welcome. I do not need to agree with you on what the agenda is going to be 4 years from now. I just need to agree with you that this ain't it.
Right.
We can organize together. I think about, I'm from the South. I'm from rural Texas. And in the South, we've got these big mega churches. And say what you want about the big mega churches, and I have. One of the smart things
they're fun.
They do. Well, actually, they are fun.
They are. Oh, yeah.
They are fun.
That's why you go to church. It's for the party.
Yeah. No, you know what they don't do? When somebody new comes in, they don't scold them and say, where the hell have you been?
Right.
They don't make them just listen to a really boring lecture about how bad they are. It's a party. There are fireworks. There's a light
band.
show. There's a band. There's cheering. There's this collective effervescence feeling that they're part of something. But the other thing, what I was going to say, one thing they do that's really smart is they save the best parking spots at the front for newbies who have never been there before. How brilliant is that?
That's smart.
Our movements need to be welcoming to new people.
Yeah.
If there were enough of us already, we wouldn't be in this situation, y'all. We have to have more people. We have to recruit more people. We have to welcome them in. We've got to welcome them with open arms and encourage them to take on leadership roles and be part of this, to pull in their communities. So, look, I think the political system failed those people who voted for Trump hoping for better prices for eggs and bread. I think the Democratic Party has failed those voters, and we should talk seriously about how the Democratic Party is failing now. We're not an arm of the Democratic Party. We're fighting for our democracy, and we would welcome anybody in who wants to be part of this fight.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Debbie had a point. Yes.
Go ahead.
I don't have a question. I have things to say.
Excellent. Debbie has the floor.
So I want everyone listening to imagine the effect if everyone listening did these quick action items.
Love it.
1, go to nokings.org, find out your postcode or your zip code, and sign up for a protest near you and grab a friend. That's easy. That won't take long. Mm-hmm. Check out the Democrats Abroad website. You can say what that is, Rachel, and just put in your email and make sure you're registered to vote. That's not too hard, and you have people to help you. And then put your elected officials' phone numbers in your phone. I have them. And then call them once a week. Vote for this, don't vote for that. Everybody listening does these 3 things. I guarantee you there's going to be a result and a win somewhere.
Hear, hear. Democrats.org.
Always taking us back to the actual practical action items, Debbie. I'm here talking about political analysis, whatever. And everybody's like, but what are we going to do? What are we going to do? That is where, listen to Debbie. Don't listen to me.
You need both, the dreamers and the doers.
Oh, I'm calling Leah as soon as we hang up and tell her that you told me.
That's wonderful. So we were talking earlier, you have just a couple of principles you've sort of spelled out, Ezra, that don't leave politics to the politicians. It's too important. This movement is locally led. What other principles are you guided by?
Well, certainly nonviolence. I think that's really important. And I take nonviolence seriously because nonviolence is also a hard-headed strategic position. The theory behind nonviolence is that in order to build mass opposition to authoritarianism, you've got to engage in nonviolent behavior. I think it's the right thing to do because I don't think you should engage in violence, but I also think it's the strategically smart thing to do. So if you see disruptors, if you see folks out there trying to push the envelope there, they're not bolder. I think it can sometimes be presented that way. They're counterproductive. They're undermining the effort. So I do think that is a core value that we hold. With 1,300 events on Hands Off all across the world, not a single reported incident all over the world.
Amazing.
Proud, incredible effort from folks on the ground. And we do a lot to help people do that. There are practical things you can do to learn about de-escalation and the principles of nonviolence to make sure that's part of your work. But a real principle, Debbie mentioned this. Debbie is doing a lot of actual work helping individuals, but the way she's doing it, she found her group. And maybe it's indivisible. It makes sense for you listening. Maybe it's not. That's cool. There's a quote from, I mentioned him already, Timothy Snyder, this expert in authoritarianism. He wrote On Tyranny. And he said shortly after the election, they want you to feel alone. Nobody's going to fix this alone. That's not how this works. Mm-hmm. You got to find your community. You got to find other folks who are like-minded, ideally geographically near you, and meet in person, not just on a Zoom. Find them in person, go to a living room, go to a library, go to a community center, and start meeting regularly. Because from that, what you're going to find is you can actually aggregate, build, and apply power better as a group. That's how a democracy works. But it's also going to sustain you. It's going to sustain you. It's going to keep you in the fight. And you're going to find a community that helps you get through this. So I'm a huge believer in geographic group-based organizing. I think it just has a massive impact on what you're able to achieve.
Wonderful. Yeah. Harder when you're spread around the world, but we do it on Zoom. And we do meet locally when we can.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of things that we find is, at least here in Canada, and we see this around the world as well, is Canadians want to get involved.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of a global thing too. So being the catalyst, the start for this protest, and then going out there on the internet and just making it public any way you can, it's amazing who shows up. And in many ways, I find when I encounter Canadians at some of these uniquely American protests, they're even more frustrated than I am because at least I voted the other way and did something. But there is certainly a feeling I find a lot in Ottawa, in Canada, and being so connected to the United States in so many ways that these are Canadians who had nothing to do with this whole thing, but they feel they're being harmed by it and want to get involved and are really annoyed.
They should be. They should be annoyed. They should be pissed off. And then they should do something.
Yeah. Yeah. So what can people around the world do?
Yep.
We're not in the U.S. How can we help other than making calls to our legislators?
Well, and these are Canadians who they don't have a legislature,
that's true.
a congressman to call. And I think that's kind of where I was going with that is as annoying as all of us are as Americans, it's amazing how annoyed the world is at the moment.
Yes.
Does anybody have any advice on what the world can do at this point?
Well, there's international indivisible groups that are popping up all over. Join one of them. That's a new thing, right, Ezra? This is new. That last couple months.
Look, we're averaging, this is globally, mostly it's domestic, but we are seeing indivisible groups all over. Just last week, a new indivisible group in Ecuador formed. We see indivisible groups in Europe and Canada. There's nothing unique or magical about this idea. Human beings have been gathering in groups of dozens of people for, 200,000 years. Mm-hmm. So the idea of gathering together in your community to protect yourself and others in your community is the most human thing that you can do. So if Indivisible makes sense for you, great. If some other local group makes sense for you, great. If you're not finding your community nearby, form it. A lot of indivisible groups started with 2 friends who were like, well, I guess we'll get together. And suddenly they found there were hundreds of others in their community that wanted to be part of it. Again, they want you to feel alone. They want you to feel powerless. And if you feel alone and powerless, you are. You are. That's how it works. Unless you're super rich or super famous, you probably don't have very much power as an individual. You do have power and security in a group. So a very practical way, if you don't want to start out just by forming a group, go to knowkings.org, find your local protest, meet some people, be friendly, go out, exchange phone numbers, get on group chats and say, hey, what are we doing next week? We meeting on anything? What's next?
Yep. Excellent. Anything else that you guys, either of you would like to share before we say thank you so much?
I think the last thing I just want to leave everybody with is, listen, it's hard to make a tremendous difference, just you. But you and another person, I like to think of it as little raindrops that come together and they make the tidal wave. So everybody listening is a raindrop. But when we come together, that's all we need. So be a raindrop and do your thing.
1,000%. I just, this weekend was a national convening. We did Indivisifest in DC, and we brought together a few hundred indivisible leaders from just about every state in the country, and we were doing trainings and strategy and tactics. And I was at one panel that was building the car while driving it, and it was indivisible leaders who were talking about their experience starting their indivisible group. And I think there's some sense out there that there are quote-unquote grassroots leaders, and there are leaders that you read about and they always wanted to lead and they're extroverts and they know everybody. That's not what this looks like. Mm-hmm. there's nobody else that's out there that's got special skills that you don't have. There's nobody who's writing in to save the day that isn't you. That people-powered movements are built by normal, everyday folks who are listening to this show, who decided to raise their hand and say, well, shit, I guess nobody else is doing this. I guess I'll do it. It seems like a pain, but if I don't do this, it's not going to come together, so I'll do it. So I think there's a lot of imposter syndrome out there. And like, if you needed somebody to tell you you're qualified, take this as somebody telling you you're qualified. If you want to do it, do it. And I hope you do, because we need more people doing it. We need to get that 3.5%. And that's only going to happen if normal, everyday people who are not politicians, who are not part of the political ecosystem, who are teachers and nurses and IT technicians and office workers and federal workers, they say, well, I guess I'm going to do it. That's what we need.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's what I did. I was not politically active before the individual died. I was not.
Well, that's all I did, too. Just got really annoyed and realized yelling at the TV wasn't helping anything.
And now just try and stop me.
Yeah.
And now, at the
That's right.
Sounding very pompous, I'm a force, and I'm proud I'm a force.
She is. Oh, gosh, you should see Debbie go.
I look forward to watching. Thank you both so much for joining us and for all the work you're doing. It's really makes me feel hopeful.
Well, thank you for talking. We need more people to hear about it.
Yeah, we'll do our best. If you live outside the U.S., please register with your voting state at votefromabroad.org every year. Do it now. To find all our episodes, go to democratsabroad.org and look for us in the drop-down menu. I'm Rachel Oikster with David Schellenberg in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for listening to Democrats Abroad, the Blue Vote Cafe.